But before you start learning more about Django, I thought it would be nice to talk a little bit more about Django. So let us see what exactly is Django. Let us try and understand what do you mean by an application, and then we will see how Django fits inside the entire application scenario. So for any of your applications, you can imagine it to have different layers. So the first layer, you can imagine it to be your front end. Now front end can be composed of your HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And these days, as you know, we have a lot of frameworks for JavaScript. It can be like React, Angular, Vue, Elm, and so on. Now, the way that you are going to interact with your front end is by using devices such as your web browser or your mobile application. The next part to this puzzle is also your backend. Now, especially for our case, the backend also consists of sub layers. So one of the layer in the backend can be your models, and the next one could be your views, controllers, and so on. So normally what happens is the user who is using your web browser or your mobile application, that user is going to send a request, and this request is going to be received by our backend. Now our backend is going to process that data and it will send back a response back to the front end. Now this response is again rendered on your web browser or a mobile application depending on the kind of device that you are using. But this interaction is not so simple. A lot of time your backend has to interact with databases because that's where most of your data is going to stay. So what's going to happen is you have different databases like SQLite, Postgres, MySQL and so on. So whenever we have some kind of a request, that is this one from the user, it goes to the backend. And sometimes what the backend has to do is it has to write something to the database or it has to read something from the database. So where exactly does Django fit inside all of these things? Let us see. So yes, this is where your Django fits. So as you can see, Django sits right in the center. That is, Django is actually your backend. And this backend, it has to interact with the front end and also with the backend. So that's it. This is all Django is all about.